It was one of those evenings when the rain falls not just from the clouds but from memories too, when every drop feels like a whisper from the past. The city of London glistened under the pale streetlights, its reflections trembling over puddles as if time itself was breathing. The sound of the rain hitting the cobblestone streets carried a rhythm of nostalgia, and in a quiet corner of the city, hidden between old bookstores and forgotten alleys, stood a small café, a place where countless stories began and ended without anyone noticing. Inside, the warmth of the air met the chill of the outside world. The scent of roasted coffee beans mixed with the soft notes of music playing somewhere in the background. It was here that Emma sat by the window, her eyes lost in the storm outside. She had always found peace in rain, not because it washed things away, but because it reminded her that everything could begin again. Every drop that touched the glass was a reminder that even the sky had to cry to feel lighter. She traced invisible lines on her sketchbook, her fingers slightly trembling as she tried to capture the way the rain danced on the streets. Emma was not just an artist. She was a quiet observer of the world, the kind of soul that painted not with her hands but with her heart. To her, art was not about perfection but emotion. Each stroke was a feeling, each color a confession. She came to that cafe every evening, not for the coffee, but for the silence that existed between the hum of conversations. It was the one place where she could think without being interrupted, where she could listen to the whispers of her own heart. Somewhere across the cafe sat Liam, a writer whose words carried the same melancholy as the rain. He came every evening too, sitting in the same corner, with a half-finished manuscript open before him. His stories were about love, loss, and the quiet moments in between where people often forgot to look. But lately, he had been writing about someone else, about a girl he saw every day through the rising steam of his coffee, a girl with eyes that seemed to hold the reflection of every storm he had ever felt inside him. He never spoke to her. He just wrote, and with every line, he found himself drifting deeper into a story that didn't yet exist outside his imagination. He told himself it was just inspiration, but deep down he knew it was something more, something that scared him because it felt too real. The rain continued to fall as hours turned into minutes and minutes into forever. The world outside blurred, and inside that little cafe, two souls kept orbiting around each other without touching. Sometimes, destiny doesn't need noise. It works in silence, aligning hearts the way gravity aligns stars. Emma looked up from her sketchbook for a brief second, and her eyes met his. It was only a moment, but it was enough to change everything. There was something in his gaze, an unspoken recognition, as if they had met somewhere before, in a dream or in another lifetime. She quickly looked away, her heartbeat betraying the calm on her face. Liam closed his notebook, hiding a faint smile, knowing that for the first time in a long time, his words had found a reason to exist. Days passed, and the cafe became their universe. Two strangers sharing space, time, and silence without a single word. The rain was always there, like a bridge connecting their solitude. Emma painted, Liam wrote, and life moved softly around them. But sometimes, silence begins to speak when hearts start to listen. Liam began to notice how she smiled when it rained harder, how she would tilt her head slightly, as if listening to secrets only the weather could tell. He noticed the way her fingers paused above the paper before every stroke, as if she was afraid of ruining something beautiful. He wanted to write about her, not as a muse but as a miracle. And so he did. Each night, his pages filled with her laughter, her stillness, and the way her presence made the world feel less lonely. Emma too began to sense something in the air, a quiet pull, a warmth that existed without words. She started painting differently. Her skies grew brighter, her rain softer, her figures less alone. It was as if her art had begun to breathe again, inspired by a feeling she couldn't quite name. Sometimes she would catch a glimpse of the man in the corner, his head bowed over his notebook, and she would wonder what he was writing, and if she was somewhere between his lines. Then came the night that changed everything. The rain was heavier than usual, falling in sheets, making the world outside vanish into a blur of gray and silver. The cafe lights flickered softly, creating shadows that danced across the walls. Emma sat by her window, lost in thought, when her pencil slipped from her hand and rolled across the floor. She bent to catch it but missed, and it stopped right beside Liam's shoes. When she looked up, he was already holding it out to her. Their eyes met again, longer this time, deeper. And though no words were spoken, something was exchanged. A promise, a beginning, a story that neither of them could have written alone. After that night, the world seemed to shift slightly. Their quiet rituals intertwined. Some evenings, he would leave a folded napkin on her table. Small pieces of writing, half poems, unfinished sentences. She would smile, take them home and turn them into paintings. Sometimes she would sketch something and leave it near his corner, and he would turn it into words. They became two halves of the same story told in different languages, one of images, one of ink. And the cafe became their secret world, a sanctuary where rain was not sadness but music. Weeks melted into months, and love grew between them like ivy. Slow, steady, inevitable. They never needed confessions or declarations. It was in the way he would pull out her chair before sitting down, the way she would bring him an extra napkin when his coffee spilled, the way their eyes would meet every time thunder rumbled outside. Sometimes love doesn't announce itself. It just settles quietly into your life until you can't remember a time without it. But life, like rain, changes its rhythm when you least expect. One evening, as the sun sank behind the drenched skyline, Liam received a letter. A publisher from New York had read his work and wanted to meet him. It was everything he had ever dreamed of. The opportunity of a lifetime. But dreams often come with choices, and choices have consequences. He looked at the cafe, at Emma by the window, painting another storm, unaware that she was the calm he had been searching for all his life. He wanted to tell her, but how do you tell someone that your dream might take you away from them? That night, he wrote one last page in his notebook. Not a story, but a confession. A thank you for existing, for inspiring him, for showing him that love could be silent and still be real. The next day, the rain fell heavier than ever. He sat across from her as always, but the air between them felt different, weighted with something unspoken. She noticed the envelope on his table and the faraway look in his eyes. She didn't ask. She didn't need to. Some truths are already written in silence. He left without saying goodbye, only leaving behind a small note tucked beneath her sketchbook. She found it hours later. It said, "Sometimes the rain has to stop before you realize how much you miss its sound." Tears blurred her vision as she read it, and for the first time, she couldn't bring herself to paint. The cafe felt empty, even when full of people. Months drifted by. The seasons changed, but Emma's evenings remained the same. She still came to the cafe, still sat by the window, still watched the rain. But her art had changed, her colors dimmed, her skies dull. She missed the quiet energy that had once surrounded her, the invisible connection that had made everything feel alive. Sometimes she imagined him walking in, drenched, smiling that shy smile, holding his notebook. But every time the door opened, it was someone else. Loneliness doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in familiar places. Meanwhile, in New York, Liam found success but not peace. His book was published, his name praised, but every applause sounded hollow. In crowded rooms, he heard echoes of rain. In every city he visited, he searched for her face among strangers. He realized that home wasn't a place, it was a person, and he had left his behind. He wrote another book, this one not for publishers but for her. He called it Whispers of the Rain. Every chapter was a memory. The way she looked at the world, the way she smiled at storms, the way she unknowingly became his muse, his reason, his silence. 1 year later, on a grey afternoon, he returned to London. The city hadn't changed, but he had. His heart was heavier, but his purpose clearer. The same cafe waited at the same corner, the same smell of coffee in the air, the same sound of rain tapping against the glass. And there she was, still by the window, still painting, still lost in the rhythm of the rain. For a moment, he just stood there, afraid to move, afraid to believe that time hadn't erased him from her world. Then, slowly he walked forward. Emma looked up. For a heartbeat, she didn't recognize him. The beard, the tired eyes, the years that had passed between them. But then she saw it. The same gentleness, the same love, the same story that had never ended. He placed a book on the table before her. The title read, Whispers of the Rain. She opened it, her hands trembling, and read the dedication. For the girl who taught me that love, like rain, never really leaves. It just finds new ways to fall. She looked up, tears glistening in her eyes, and for the first time in a long while, she smiled. Not the polite smile she gave to strangers, but the one that reached her soul. Outside, the rain began to pour harder, as if the sky itself was celebrating their reunion. People hurried with umbrellas, cars splashed through puddles, and yet inside that little cafe, time stood still. Two souls, once separated by dreams, were reunited by fate. No words were needed. Just the sound of rain, the warmth of presence, and the quiet knowing that love had never really left. It had simply been waiting for the right moment to return. As the night deepened and the city lights flickered against the wet glass, Emma painted once more, this time not the storm but the calm after it. Liam watched her, realizing that sometimes the most beautiful stories are not the ones we write, but the ones we live. The rain outside became their applause, and for the first time, both of them understood that love is not about holding on. It's about finding someone worth returning to. Because in the end, every rain has its rhythm, every heart has its home, and every story, no matter how long the silence, finds its way back to where it began. The morning after Liam's return to London arrived like a gentle sigh, soft and golden, brushing over the city with the tenderness of someone who had been waiting a lifetime to breathe again. The rain had stopped overnight, leaving the streets wet and glistening, reflecting the pale light of the sun as it peeked through clouds that still lingered in soft gray layers. Emma awoke with a faint sound of dripping water against the windowpane, a rhythmic reminder that life continued outside even when hearts had paused for moments too long. Her room smelled faintly of coffee and paper, the sketches of last night still scattered across her table, each stroke capturing not just rain, but the delicate emotions that had grown heavy within her since Liam's departure. She ran her fingers along the edges of her notebook, feeling the impressions of graphite and ink as if they were tiny echoes of the heartbeat she had been missing for months. Each drawing was a memory frozen in time, a fragment of a story that had remained unfinished until his presence returned to color it anew. She could feel the quiet stirrings of hope rising like sunlight through mist, gentle yet insistent, urging her to move, to breathe, to step once again into the world where he now existed beside her. The cafe awaited them both as it always had, but it felt different this morning, infused with anticipation and the weight of stories yet untold. Liam, meanwhile, had awakened in the apartment he had taken in for the week, the walls echoing with the emptiness he had carried across oceans, and yet somehow, in the same breath, resonating with the warmth of a life that had patiently waited for his return. He moved slowly, savoring each motion, knowing that this time there would be no departures, no letters folded neatly into envelopes, no silence stretched across continents. The city outside seemed to welcome him back, the glint of wet asphalt reflecting the first pale rays of sunlight in patterns that danced like music across the streets, a symphony composed by the rain that had washed away months of separation. As he made his way through familiar lanes, passing the bookshops and the small bridges that arched over canals darkened by lingering rainfall, he felt the rhythm of the city synchronizing with the rhythm of his own pulse, each step carrying him closer to the small cafe where Emma waited, as though she had always been waiting there, perched on the edge of possibility and certainty at once. Inside, Emma had already begun her routine, setting her sketchbook open as if inviting the day to start anew, a fresh canvas for the story that had already begun unfolding the night before. The smell of coffee was stronger than usual, perhaps because of anticipation, perhaps because the air itself seemed thicker with meaning. When Liam entered, unnoticed by others, the usual hum of conversation became background music to the symphony that played silently between them. He approached slowly, feeling the weight of every day lost and every moment regained, and as he took the seat opposite her, a quiet understanding passed without words, an invisible bridge built of trust, longing, and the knowledge that they had both arrived here at the exact right time. The morning stretched lazily around them, hours melting like candle wax, Yet no one noticed as time bent itself to accommodate two hearts rediscovering a rhythm they had once known. Emma's sketches caught his eye, each one more vibrant than the last, and Liam understood that her art was no longer a solitary expression of longing, but a celebration of presence, of having someone who saw her soul as clearly as she saw his. He noticed the subtle changes in her posture, the slight lift of her chin, the softness in her gaze that spoke of relief and trust, and in that silent observation, he felt the deepening of his own resolve to protect, cherish, and honor what they had found again. Outside, the city moved on. Carriages and taxis, the muted chatter of pedestrians, the occasional splash of water from a hurried step. Yet inside the small cafe, there existed a world entirely their own. The sun moved higher, casting streaks of light across the worn wooden floors, illuminating the tiny motes of dust dancing in the golden rays. Each one a tiny miracle, unnoticed yet perfect. Liam pulled out his notebook, not to write for the world, but to capture the quiet magic of the moment, the simple fact of being together. The joy and fear mingled like paint on a palette, and as he wrote, he realized that the story of their reunion was unfolding in ways more beautiful than any narrative he had imagined. Emma, sensing the shift in the air, picked up her pencil again, tracing the contours of a rainy street as it appeared from memory, blending past and present into a single frame. Her lines filled with hope, patience, and the quiet strength of someone who had waited not just for the return of a person, but for the return of a world made whole again. The hours passed unnoticed, each second steeped in the simple pleasures of shared existence. The warmth of a coffee cup between hands, the soft scratching of pencil on paper, the turning of notebook pages, the glances exchanged across a table, small gestures heavy with significance. Outside, clouds parted slowly, leaving behind the soft blue of a clearing sky, a visual echo of the internal clarity that had settled between them. And yet, life continued to bring subtle challenges, delicate tests of love's endurance. Even in the serenity of the cafe, both felt the fragile tension of the future pressing lightly against the edges of their peace. Liam had dreams that still required attention, obligations that could not be ignored, and Emma held a quiet desire for stability that sometimes conflicted with the unpredictability of passion and ambition. But in the presence of each other, these worries seemed manageable, softened by the knowledge that their hearts had already endured separation and had returned stronger, tempered by patience and the lessons of absence. They began to create new routines together, small rituals that spoke volumes. Morning walks along the rain-dappled streets, shared sketches and writings, discussions of dreams and fears that never ventured into arguments but instead reinforced mutual understanding. And in these tiny acts, the foundation of a relationship rebuilt on trust and respect solidified. The city around them continued its ceaseless dance. Trams rattling, bicycles weaving through puddles, the faint hum of engines blending with distant conversations. Yet all of it seemed muted, filtered through the lens of a private world they had constructed, a sanctuary that existed in parallel with the one everyone else inhabited. As days turned into weeks, Emma and Liam discovered the subtler dimensions of being together. The way silence could be comforting, the way laughter could fill gaps that words could not, the way a shared glance could convey gratitude, love, or reassurance without the need for articulation. Even mundane acts, pouring coffee, choosing the same table, flipping through a familiar book, became infused with meaning, reminders that the ordinary could be extraordinary when experienced in the presence of someone whose soul resonated with your own. But the challenges of reconciling their individual lives with their shared one were never far away. Liam's ambitions demanded time, travel, and attention, and Emma's artistry required space, focus, and inspiration. They learned to navigate these realities gently, creating boundaries not as walls but as bridges that allowed growth alongside togetherness. It was a delicate dance, a balancing act that required constant awareness, empathy, and compromise, yet each step they took affirmed that love, when nurtured, could endure more than just the test of time. It could flourish amidst the pressures of reality. As autumn deepened, leaves turning shades of gold and crimson, Emma and Liam found themselves exploring the city in ways they had never before. Rain had become a companion rather than a backdrop, each storm a reminder of past separation and present reunion. They wandered along familiar streets, discovering new corners of the city, cafes and bookstores previously unnoticed. And in each shared discovery, They celebrated not only the external world but the internal one they were building together. Nights were spent in quiet reflection, reading aloud to each other from favorite novels, sketching side by side, sharing thoughts on life, love, and art. Occasionally, they would step outside into the night air, letting the cool breeze brush past them, and feel a connection to the city, to each other, and to the small, fragile miracle of having returned to one another. Every storm brought them closer, every puddle reflected a shared journey, every fading sunset reminded them that the most meaningful moments often passed quietly, unnoticed by all but those who cherished them. Months passed, seasons shifted, and the rhythm of their life together began to solidify, not in grandeur or spectacle, but in intimacy, consistency, and shared understanding. Emma's art became brighter, richer, more confident, while Liam's writing flourished, infused with the vitality that comes from experiencing love fully and consciously. Together, they discovered that love was not merely a feeling, but an ongoing act, of noticing, nurturing, and cherishing, of being present in moments both ordinary and extraordinary. And so, in the quiet magic of London streets glistening after rain, in the soft hum of a cafe that had witnessed their beginnings, Emma and Liam lived the delicate, profound poetry of shared life, where each glance, each touch, each breath was a line in the narrative of their enduring love. The world continued on around them, busy and indifferent, yet within their sanctuary, love thrived, not because it was grand or dramatic, but because it was steady, resilient, and beautifully human. Each day was a reaffirmation that even after storms, after separation, after doubt, love could bloom, could endure, and could remind the soul that patience, presence, and unwavering devotion were the true essence of a story worth living. And as they looked out together at the rain returning softly to the streets they now shared, it was no longer a reminder of distance or loss, but a celebration of what had been regained, a testament to the quiet miracle that even after the longest absence, hearts that are meant to meet will always find their way back to one another, resilient, tender, and infinitely enduring. The days that followed their reunion flowed like gentle rivers, each one carrying with it the quiet rhythms of life shared and rediscovered. London moved around them with its ceaseless pulse, yet inside their world, time seemed to bend, stretch, and slow, giving space for the tender growth of something fragile and beautiful. Emma and Liam discovered that being together again was not simply the absence of distance, but an ongoing weaving of moments, gestures, and silences that spoke more eloquently than words ever could. Mornings began with sunlight spilling softly through tall windows, casting long golden streaks across the worn wooden floors of their shared apartment, streaks that highlighted the gentle movements of two lives intertwining. Liam would rise early, lingering over the pages of his notebook, letting the words pour like a quiet stream, while Emma moved among her paints and sketchbooks, her fingers tracing the contours of imagination into color. The apartment became a sanctuary of creativity and comfort, the air thick with the scent of coffee, wet earth from rain-soaked streets, and the subtle undertones of ink and paint that marked the beginning of something lasting. They fell into rhythms that were both ordinary and extraordinary. The shared silence over breakfast, the quiet laughter over small accidents, the soft brushing of hands as one reached for the other's cup, the unspoken understanding that every glance carried the weight of 1,000 emotions. Outside, the city roared with life. Trams rattled, children's voices bounced off the streets, car engines hummed, and the occasional distant wail of a siren threaded through the everyday symphony. Yet within the walls of their apartment, there was a gentle cocoon, a world both intimate and expansive, where every moment was a small miracle of presence and attention. They discovered the subtle art of coexistence, where the spaces between them were not voids but opportunities. Opportunities to notice the small details, the shifts in expression, the sighs and smiles that punctuated their shared days. Emma observed Liam as he wrote, seeing the quiet intensity in his eyes, the way his hands moved over paper, the soft furrow of concentration that revealed how deeply he cared for the world he was building with words. Liam watched Emma as she painted, noting the precision of her strokes, the way her brows furrowed slightly in focus, the way she would pause mid-motion to capture a fleeting feeling or reflection of light, and in those moments, he understood that love was not in grand gestures but in attention paid to the smallest of details. As weeks turned into months, their bond strengthened through daily rituals that might have seemed trivial to outsiders but were profound in their world. The morning walk down rain-slick streets, sharing umbrellas as they moved in tandem, the occasional laughter at a spilled coffee or a misread line in a book, and the quiet evenings spent side by side, each immersed in their own creative pursuits yet sharing the same space and breathing the same air. There were afternoons when they would wander along the Thames, the water reflecting the soft colors of a sky in flux, the ripples mirroring the subtle shifts in their own hearts, and they discovered the joy in observation, the serenity in shared silence, and the thrill of recognizing in each other a partner whose soul resonated with their own. Even mundane moments became infused with significance. The way Emma would brush a strand of hair from Liam's forehead absent-mindedly, the way Liam would fold her sketches with careful hands as though they were fragile treasures, the way each small act of kindness, attention, or affection accumulated into a tapestry of intimacy that neither could have anticipated but both cherished deeply. Yet even in this bliss, life offered its quiet tests. They confronted the challenge of balancing personal ambition with shared time, negotiating hours dedicated to writing and painting, ensuring that neither felt neglected, and learning that compromise was not sacrifice but a mutual dance that deepened trust. Liam faced moments of doubt, wondering whether the world of deadlines, publication expectations, and travel would intrude upon their sanctuary, while Emma occasionally worried that the stillness of their domestic life might stifle the spontaneity she had always valued. They spoke little of these concerns at first, instead discovering solutions through observation, empathy, and mutual respect, allowing their bond to grow organically without the need for constant verbal negotiation. Even in the quiet, their hearts communicated. A shared glance across a crowded room, the simple act of holding hands during a stroll, the choice to wait for each other before entering a cafe or crossing a street, all became rituals of reassurance, affirmations of belonging that neither could articulate but both understood. The seasons shifted, painting the city in new colors. Autumn brought crisp air, leaves turning gold and crimson, and the soft rustle of foliage underfoot. Winter followed with misted mornings, frost tracing patterns on glass, and the quiet intimacy of shared warmth beneath layers of scarves and coats. Emma's art evolved alongside these changes, reflecting the shifting tones of light, mood, and emotion that filled their days. Her colors deepened, shadows grew more intricate, highlights more luminous, and through each piece she created, she captured not only the world around her but the delicate interplay of presence and memory, of anticipation and realization, of love rediscovered. Liam, too, felt the transformation within himself. His writing, once filled with longing and absence, now carried a sense of grounded joy, tempered with patience, subtle humor, and the intricate understanding of human connection. He documented not only events but the quiet, ineffable emotions that made life worth living, understanding that love was expressed in the space between words as much as in the sentences themselves. Together, they explored the interplay of public and private worlds, moving through the city hand in hand, finding beauty in overlooked corners, sharing experiences that were both ordinary and extraordinary, and realizing that intimacy was constructed not from grand gestures alone but from the cumulative weight of small, deliberate acts of attention, empathy, and care. Their relationship deepened in ways that transcended physical presence. The trust they placed in each other's judgment, the acceptance of vulnerability, the willingness to expose fears and insecurities without fear of judgment, and the understanding that love was not static but a living, breathing entity that required nurturing, patience, and constant affirmation. Even during moments of quiet disagreement or subtle tension, they found ways to communicate through presence, through art, through shared experiences, rather than through conflict. Every storm, literal or metaphorical, became an opportunity to reinforce the bonds between them. Rain continued to fall intermittently, tracing patterns on windows, streets, and pavements, reminding them of the impermanence and beauty of the world, and simultaneously of the constancy of their shared commitment. Emma would capture these fleeting moments in her sketches, Liam in his writing, and together they constructed a parallel narrative that existed beyond the material world, one built on emotion, observation, and the profound recognition of each other's value in their lives. Nights were particularly sacred, often spent in quiet reflection or in shared creative endeavor. The glow of lamplight on pages and canvases, the soft hum of the city outside, the occasional distant echo of footsteps or laughter, all contributed to the sense that they were both part of a larger tapestry, yet entirely contained within the small, intimate sphere of each other's presence. They began to recognize the patterns of their emotions, learning to anticipate moments of anxiety, joy, or fatigue, and adjusting instinctively to support, encourage, and uplift one another. The small details mattered immensely. The warmth of a hand pressed over a cold one, the careful attention to a preferred cup of tea or coffee, the choice of music that spoke to shared memories, the way they mirrored each other's movements in subtle, unconscious synchrony, each a testament to the depth of connection they were nurturing. Even in solitude they were connected. A sketch left for the other, a note tucked into a notebook, a book marked with a passage that spoke silently to shared experience. All acted as bridges, affirmations that despite physical separation during work or errands, they remained inextricably linked. The world outside continued to impose its rhythms, deadlines, errands, seasonal festivities, and social obligations. Yet within their carefully cultivated sphere, Emma and Liam maintained a sanctuary where presence, attention, and love took precedence over distraction, noise, and societal expectation. The flow of their days became a meditation in presence. Walking through rain-slicked streets, pausing to admire reflections in puddles, lingering over coffee at sunlit tables, choosing to explore or simply exist without pressure. In these small, deliberate acts, they reinforced the lesson that love is sustained not merely by passion but by mindfulness, commitment, and the ongoing acknowledgement of another soul as equally complex, worthy, and cherished. They began to document their shared life through subtle acts, sketches that captured fleeting moments of laughter, sentences written to immortalize quiet emotions, photographs of streets, sunsets, and rain-soaked corners that had significance only to them. Each creation was both an artistic endeavor and a testament to presence, a proof that memory and love could be intertwined, stored in tangible yet delicate forms, and revisited as a reminder of the journey they were undertaking together. Even as seasons changed from winter to spring, bringing with them the renewal of life, the softening of air, and the subtle explosion of color in trees and flowers, their bond grew in parallel, enriched by the external transformations of their environment, yet firmly rooted in the internal growth of trust, empathy, and shared vision. With each passing day, Emma and Liam discovered new dimensions of one another. Hidden fears, quiet joys, subtle tendencies that became endearing rather than vexing, and a growing recognition that true intimacy requires attention, patience, and a willingness to adapt without losing oneself. Their love became a dynamic organism, resilient yet gentle, strong yet soft, capable of withstanding minor storms while remaining exquisitely sensitive to the delicate harmonies that made their union unique. And in the quiet moments, mornings spent in sunlight, afternoons wandering rain-kissed streets, evenings immersed in art and literature, nights listening to the distant city hum, they discovered that the true magic of their reunion was not simply being together, but being attuned to each other's presence in ways that transcended words, gestures, and even conscious thought. The lessons of absence, longing, and patience had matured them both, rendering their shared moments all the more precious, profound, and anchored in a deep, unwavering understanding that life's beauty lies in the shared experience of noticing, cherishing, and participating fully in the unfolding of each other's existence. Through months of shared life, Emma and Liam cultivated a love that was resilient, intimate, and fully alive, a testament to the quiet power of presence, the endurance of patience, and the subtle, inexhaustible joys of discovering day by day that one's soul has found its companion in another. The days unfolded in a quiet, steady rhythm, a cadence that spoke of comfort, trust, and the deepening of a love that had been tested by time and absence yet returned stronger than either had imagined. London, with its soft drizzle and golden morning light, became more than just a city. It became a backdrop to their life, a living canvas upon which the gentle strokes of their shared moments were painted. Emma and Liam discovered that love was not only in extraordinary gestures but in the mundane, in the quiet. Routines that created a sense of home, presence, and belonging. Mornings began with sunlight filtering through tall, narrow windows, casting patterns of gold and shadow across wooden floors, highlighting the subtle movements of two souls attuned to one another. Liam would rise first, allowing the early hours to cradle him as he filled his notebook with thoughts, reflections, and fragments of stories that now included her presence as an integral part. Emma, meanwhile, moved among paints, brushes, and sketchbooks, her hands capturing the subtleties of light, shadow, and emotion. Her creations more vibrant than ever, infused with the intimacy of their shared world. The apartment itself seemed to hum with life, every corner filled with the scent of coffee, the faint aroma of paint, and the soft whisper of pages turning, a testament to the gentle coexistence of two people learning how to share space without diminishing themselves. Days flowed seamlessly into one another as they moved through their routines, discovering joy in simple acts. The warmth of a hand brushing against another in passing, the soft laughter at minor mishaps, the careful attention to small preferences, and the quiet gratitude of presence. Even when they occupied the same room in silence, they were engaged in a dialogue of emotion, observation, and understanding, a language beyond words that spoke to the depth of their connection. They explored the city together, walking along rain-slicked streets and quiet alleys, discovering hidden corners, bookstores tucked into narrow lanes, cafes that smelled of old wood and fresh pastries, and each experience became a shared memory, a layer in the tapestry of their lives. The changing seasons mirrored the evolution of their relationship. Autumn brought crisp air and the rustle of fallen leaves, winter softened mornings with frost and mist, and spring painted the city in fresh greens and blossoms, reflecting the constant renewal of their love. Through each season, they learned patience and attentiveness. Liam noticed the way Emma's eyes lit up when a street was bathed in sunlight after a storm, the way she paused to capture reflections in puddles or the faint shimmer of light on wet cobblestones. And he understood that her art was not simply about aesthetics but about the recording of experience, emotion, and presence. Emma, in turn, observed the way Liam would pause mid-writing, letting a sentence linger in the air before it touched the page, the way he would notice a shadow, a reflection, or a small act of beauty in the world around them. And she realized that his writing had become richer, more attuned, and more alive since he had returned to her. Their routines became a blend of solitude and togetherness, each respecting the other's need for focus, creativity, and reflection while sharing the quiet moments that nourished the spirit. Breakfasts taken together, walks in the park, spontaneous visits to art exhibitions or bookshops, and evenings spent reading side by side created a rhythm of intimacy that deepened with each passing day. Even mundane acts, preparing a cup of coffee, folding sketches, turning notebook pages, were suffused with significance, small affirmations of mutual care and devotion. The trust between them grew in tandem with their affection. They spoke openly about ambitions, fears, and dreams, each conversation reinforcing their commitment to supporting one another. Liam learned that Emma's need for creative space was as important as his own writing time, while Emma recognized that Liam's desire to pursue certain projects did not diminish his dedication to their shared life. They cultivated a balance between independence and interdependence, understanding that love thrived not in possession but in mutual respect, encouragement, and celebration of individuality within togetherness. Even in moments of tension, they discovered the power of presence, patience, and empathy. Minor disagreements were resolved with quiet reflection and understanding rather than argument, and each challenge became an opportunity to reaffirm trust, communication, and the willingness to adapt for the benefit of the relationship. The city continued to move around them, its rhythms unceasing. The hum of traffic, the distant clatter of trams, the occasional cry of a street vendor, the whisper of leaves rustling in the wind. Yet within their shared world, these sounds became a soothing backdrop to the deeper music of intimacy, attentiveness, and presence. They began documenting their shared life not only through art and writing but also through rituals of observation, reflection, and memory. Sketches captured fleeting expressions, reflections in puddles, the glow of lamplight on pages, and the subtle movements of the city that echoed the inner landscapes of their emotions. Liam's writing mirrored this approach, recording the quiet grandeur of daily life, the small but profound moments of connection, and the unfolding beauty of a love that had weathered absence and returned with resilience. Even as the seasons shifted and external obligations pressed upon them, Emma and Liam remained committed to creating a sanctuary within which love could thrive. They discovered the joy of shared silence, where presence itself spoke louder than words, and the exhilaration of shared discovery, whether exploring the city or uncovering new layers of each other's hearts. Gradually, their relationship moved beyond the intensity of reunion into a deeper, more enduring intimacy. They understood the importance of anticipation and surprise, of leaving space for spontaneity within routines, and of finding wonder in the ordinary. Each day offered subtle lessons. The beauty of waiting for a moment of light to hit a canvas just so, the significance of noticing how one's partner reacts to a passing shadow, the importance of sharing attention, focus, and gratitude. Together, they explored the dynamics of interdependence, discovering that love was strengthened not by surrendering identity but by intertwining lives in a way that allowed both to flourish. Emma's art evolved, incorporating layers of narrative, reflection, and emotion that reflected the depth of their shared experiences. Liam's writing became more nuanced, infused with an understanding of intimacy, vulnerability, and resilience, capturing the quiet poetry of daily life and the enduring beauty of two souls navigating love together. Even in times of subtle strain, when schedules conflicted, when creative pursuits demanded attention, or when the pressures of the outside world encroached, they maintained a commitment to empathy, understanding, and presence, recognizing that love required not only passion but also patience, attentiveness, and deliberate care. Their shared life became a meditation in gratitude, observation, and connection. Walks through rain-soaked streets became opportunities to reflect, to notice, and to be present with one another. Afternoons spent in quiet creation, evenings dedicated to reading or shared conversation, and nights filled with the gentle hum of the city outside all reinforced the depth, resilience, and vitality of their love. Over time, the world itself seemed to mirror the evolution of their relationship. Skies cleared after storms, blossoms returned each spring, and the rhythm of the city echoed the steady quiet.